I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission for Wednesday, June 23rd, 2021. Can she have roll call?
Chair Clark.
Here.
Vice Chair McGill. Vice Chair McGill, are you muted?
Well, I clicked too fast. I'm here.
Great. Commissioner Baker.
Present.
Commissioner Feck.
Here.
Commissioner Lesnar Buxton.
You.
Commissioner Longstreet.
Here.
And Commissioner Perry.
Present.
Thank you. Do we have any changes to the agenda? I don't believe we do. Written communications.
No, Chair Clark and Commissioners, no written communications other than what's on your street tree agenda for today.
Thank you. Come to public comment. Any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the commission that is not scheduled for a public discussion before the commission. The total amount of time for public comment will be 15 minutes. Do we see any hands raised?
Not yet. Let's let them know. For those who wish to speak during public comment, please use the raise your hand functionality in the GoToWebinar control panel. We are currently displaying a graphic showing where that is located. When I call on you, please unmute yourself and then speak for a maximum of 2 minutes. For those who wish to speak on an agenda item later in the meeting, please raise your hand when the item is under discussion. Chair Clark, we have one raised hand, Christine Reisenfeld. I will unmute you and you will have 2 minutes to speak. You will need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay. Hello. My name is Christine Reisenfeld and I am a board member of the Land Trust. The reason I'm speaking is the Land Trust is a part owner. We have shared ownership of this house that is now occupied by Meredith Hendricks, our new executive director. We had an application. Originally, there were 2 items. One was unfortunately the recommendation that a seminal tree, a Cedrus deodora, that was in very bad condition, that we thought it needed to be evaluated and removed, and unfortunately it did. And the second part of that was, though, there were 2 king palms that are planted just less than actually 2 feet from the street that were in good condition, but were strangely planted. Excuse me.
I'm sorry, are you speaking to the 3019 Kai Noguera address?
I am.
So that item is on our agenda under the Street Tree Advisory Committee items, and I believe this public comment portion right now is for items not on the agenda.
I'm sorry. I thought I had to put my hand up in case for the later period, so I'll stop speaking.
Yeah, it gets confusing. I understand how that happened, but it's if we wait until we get to that part of the agenda, we get to see the whole presentation from the arborist and hear what the Street Tree Advisory Committee said, and then we get to hear from you, so it's a bit more cohesive. So we'll come back.
Didn't mean to jump the queue. I just I wanted to make sure that it didn't get missed.
Make sure you.
So, Ms. Reisenfeld, when that item is under discussion, go ahead and raise your hand at that time, and then I will call on you.
Should I just take it off now? So
I've lowered it. You can raise it again later.
Okay. Is there anybody else raising their hand?
Chair Clark, I do not see any more raised hands.
Okay. We do not have a youth council report today, so I'll move to commissioner committee assignment reports, and I'll start with Commissioner Perry.
I actually went down and walked the art show a couple of weeks ago and was actually really surprised to see that their attendance are down below 70. And I believe historically they're 250 to 300. I know there's been a lot of discussion amongst the committee. Did not attend their meeting. I did have a conversation with a couple of their board members, and I hope that they are able to find a way to get their numbers back up to historic. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Baker?
Sorry, did you say Baker?
I did.
Okay, sorry, cut out. So I attended the Golf Advisory Committee meeting this month. I don't have my notes with me, but what I recall was that the golf course is doing well. As we approach the summer months, I just encourage everyone to get out there. It's a great way to exercise and just be with friends in the community. So get out there and golf.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Longstreet?
I was unable to attend the Neighborhood Advisory Council meeting this month. We upcoming on this.
Oh, you cut out.
I was unable to attend the Neighborhood Advisory Council, but next Friday on the 2nd, we have a De La Guerra Plaza revitalization meeting.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Feck?
Creeks Commission did meet this month, but I was out of town and unable to attend.
Thank you. Commissioner Lesnar Buxton?
I attended one of the youth commission meeting where they pick members for next year, and then I believe they're in recess until mid-August.
Thank you. Vice Chair McGill?
There was no Park Foundation meeting this month, though I believe we are meeting next month. And I did attend the June 8th City Council meeting and spoke with regard to the Ortega Park murals.
Thank you. I attended the Street Tree Advisory Committee meeting. We will be talking about all the trees that we discussed that day. I also attended National Trails Day that was run by Steve Biddle. Was really excited to see community volunteers and Forest Service and county and city parks working together to improve our trails. I think Ms. Zachary will talk more about that in the director's report. And I also did attend the city council meeting regarding Ortega Park and gave some comments on that as well. With that, we will move to commission and staff communications.
Chair Clark and Commissioners, there's nothing specific related to communications for this month.
And do we have employee recognition service award pins?
Yes, Chair Clark and Commissioners, Dana Versola, who is a senior grounds maintenance worker in the Parks Division, is recognized for 20 years of service with the City of Santa Barbara, all 20 in the Parks and Recreation Department. Dana has moved up the chain, so to speak, increasing his role and responsibilities, overseeing different areas of our park system, and is an affable team player and always a great person to chat with. And one day when we get to have another gathering, hopefully you'll be able to meet him along with everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations to Dana. And thanks to him for being an affable team player. That's quite a commendation. If everybody I worked with was an affable team player, it would be a great day every day. So thanks for that. Did anyone have any questions on the summary of council actions?
I did. I was interested to see the Chase Palm Park project, the Arbor. It's historically, it is a great deal of money to look at the expenditure, but this was part, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Zachary, part of the original plan of Chase Palm Park expansion, and was never completed till now. And this is money that was set aside from the redevelopment agency and the successor agency dollars. So it's interesting to see it come up now. It'll be wonderful to see it completed, but that is a probably 25-year-old project, Ms. Zachary?
Chair Clark, Commissioner Longstreet, yes, I think the park officially opened in 1998, so 23, although maybe it was really ready in 97. And you're correct that there was to be an arbor as part of the project. It was excluded at the time due to cost, kind of a classic situation. The money was set aside as an obligation under the RDA. And so it was funds that the city was able to retain when the governor dissolved redevelopment agencies. The timing of this really is a result of the fact that the department has been chronically short-staffed on a lot of levels for many years. And we finally were at the point where we had enough staff availability to move forward with the project. So the city committed to the Parker family that it would pursue construction of an arbor in Chase Palm Park, and we've been in communication with them. It won't be located in the original space because the grades have all changed and it's currently not an appropriate place. So we are looking at augmenting the space between the Great Meadow and Casa Las Palmas as a way to have an arbor that helps both delineate those spaces and provide an enjoyable outdoor, at times more shaded experience. And then also faces the new waterfront hotel, which is a hotel that Parker family is still pursuing.
Thank you.
Okay, we can move on to the minutes. Got a chance to read them.
I'll move that we approve.
To waive the reading and approve the minutes. I'll second that. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. Opposed? So moved. And with that, we'll move on to our Street Tree Advisory Committee items. I'd like to welcome Mr. Slack.
Good afternoon, Chair Clark and Commissioners. Next slide, please. The first Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review today is the request to remove 2 king palms located within the public right-of-way at 3109 Cayo Noguera. The applicant was requesting the removal of these king palms primarily due to plans to redevelop the landscaping. The applicant feels that the palms really don't complement the property much, and they had proposals to do comprehensive landscape revisions, including the proposed planting of one or several smaller canopy trees within the front yard. The committee reviewed the applicant's listed reasons for removal, discussed the general condition of the trees, noting that they were in good health and had been well maintained over the years. There was some discussion about the palms placement. As many of you know, the San Roque neighborhood where this property is located doesn't have what we refer to as a fully improved right-of-way. So there's no traditional parkway and sidewalk throughout the majority of this neighborhood. These palms are planted relatively close to the road in what appears to be somewhat of a improved walking path, but technically it's not like an actual sidewalk. So there was lots of discussion about that. We provided the necessary clarification. And again, these palms technically meet the classification and definition in the ordinance as street trees. The committee looked at the potential for the palms to be retained while still allowing for canopy trees to be planted in the property. There was general consensus amongst the committee members that the applicant could still move forward with landscape improvements to the property and that trees still could be planted and they could coexist with the king palms. And ultimately, the committee made a recommendation to deny the request for the removal of the 2 king palms located at 3109 Cayo Noguera.
Thank you. Questions? Okay, if there are no questions, I will.
Yes. Mr. Slack, is it the designated street tree for this neighborhood, the jacaranda?
Chair Clark and Commissioner Perry, that is correct. It's not uncommon throughout town for streets to have, one or several species of trees that doesn't necessarily conform to the designation. San Roque has a sort of rich history of diverse plantings within the public right-of-way for one reason or another. We don't really know the reasoning or the history behind the actual planting of these king palms. And there does exist lots of trees in town that pre-exist the actual street tree designation. So the designated street tree species for this particular section of Cayo Negara is the jacaranda, not the king palm.
Are there any further questions before we invite the public to speak? Okay.
I'm sorry, just one quick. I'm just noting the comment about the canopies being too close together in the application letter. Can you speak to that, Mr. Slack?
Chair Clark and Commissioner McGill. Yeah, the applicant did note that the canopies were close together, competing. I think that is certainly a valid opinion. I don't think that there's any real detrimental impact between the palms being close together. The canopy of the king palms will not increase in any additional size from where they currently are. So while some may think that they may be close together, other people could easily think that they could coexist. And again, I don't think that there's really no like structural or health issues regarding how close the trees are to one another.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, Ms. Navarez, is there anybody here to speak to this agenda item?
Yes, Chair Clark, Ms. Reisenfeld. Ms. Reisenfeld, go ahead and speak. You may unmute yourself and speak.
Thank you. As I stated before, we unfortunately had a seminal tree here that was very ill and had to be removed. And frankly, until that was removed, nobody even really noticed these palms or paid much attention. Following its removal, they are, they're the only trees in front of the house. And although they are healthy, they certainly really don't seem to provide any kind of natural landscape appeal, given this is a little cottage house, and they are so very close to the street and close together. In the discussion with the committee, which I think Mr. Slack has absolutely stated a good summary of that, everyone though was sympathetic to the fact that this wouldn't be anybody's choice to plant them the way they were planted or even choose that tree. And we did note that in 1977, the master plan did designate the jacaranda as the street tree. Following the last proceedings, I've discussed with the executive director, because we want her really to make the selections on the plantings in the front garden. She wants to remove a lot of the lawn and put in more plants that are going to draw animals and wildlife and insects, birds. I discussed this with her and said, we really did not offer as one of our options or a suggestion that we replace these two palms with the jacaranda. And she said that would make complete sense to her, and we could make the parkway truly a parkway, take out that little self-created sort of DG path that Mr. Slack referred to, and really restore the parkway, planting the tree a little further back so that the tree's roots would have more room. So I would like to make that recommendation that we would commit to doing that and creating another location for a jacaranda. There is one just catty corner from this residence, and it's in good health. And I think it would look much better with the house, and certainly it would fit better with additional plantings that they want to do. I know it's always a difficult decision to remove any plant, but sometimes things just aren't planted in the right spot. And I don't believe any permit was ever sought to do these plantings in the street
Thank you,
area.
Ms. Thank you. Is there been anybody else, Ms. Navarez, to speak on this tree? These trees.
Chair Clark, no, there are no more raised hands.
Okay, so that opens us back up to discussion about these king palms. I did want to bring something back for the meeting, something that Maury said during the meeting. She was just concerned with establishing a precedent and removing trees that there didn't seem to exist a real reason in the municipal code to remove. So that's just something to keep in your mind during your considerations. And I believe somebody else in the Street Tree Advisory Committee, I believe Mr. Reed, had said that the applicant, there was plenty of room to plant new trees without removing these.
That was my question, is there any reason that these trees would have to be removed to re-landscape that front yard? When it was said that the large tree was removed and then suddenly these became apparent, I would feel better if some trees were planted that then had some time to grow in before we addressed removing a mature, even though they're palms, I understand they don't provide canopy, but that the canopy trees had some time to take hold and establish themselves. Is there any reason that can't happen in a different sequence?
Sure.
Chair Clark.
Well,
I agree with Ms. Longstreet's position. Adding the jacarandas accomplishes the goal of this commission, and it gives the canopy, it gives the continuity, it gives the sight line. And can't they be phased in and preserve the palm tree until those trees are allowed to accomplish some degree of growth? I think that's a wonderful solution.
So my understanding that you are recommending denial without prejudice?
Yes.
Mr. Longstreet?
To me, that means a shorter term. I would say deny. We would look at this again in, let's say, 3 to 5 years, because a jacaranda is not going to take off in a year. In 3 to 5 years, then that it can come back for removal when there's some established tree cover in that front yard.
I agree with that. Vice Chair McGill?
Yeah, I'm just following the same line of logic, because I understand the appeal of having a jacaranda instead of the king palms. Does it negatively impact where you could put the jacaranda if you waited to remove the king palms?
Chair Clark and commissioners, just to provide some clarification, I think it does. It heavily depends upon where the proposed planting would be for the jacaranda. So Ms. Reisenfeld was actually proposing to plant it within what we would consider the parkway space, which would be within 6 feet of the roadway. So if that was the ultimate goal, then there would be some level of conflict with planting the jacaranda, which would probably have to occur in between the 2 existing king palms, roughly. Alternatively, if they were planting a shade tree in the front yard, there's conflict is going to be avoided for several years. So I think it really depends on where the applicant's really motivated to put the replacement tree. So when she was providing comments, she was saying that they would like to basically remove the king palms, plant a jacaranda within that 6-foot strip that would then designate it as a street tree. So I think there would be some level of conflict between the existing palms and the new street tree, whereas if it was a setback tree, you're going to have years and years of growth before there's going to be any kind of conflict between the shade tree and the palm trees.
And I'm sorry, just to follow up, from a municipal point of view, does it matter, is there a preference for street trees over setback trees or vice versa? I mean, does it matter?
Chair Clark and Commissioner McGill, I think that while we always want to try to promote street trees, I think collectively on a broader level, our mission is just to promote tree planting in general. So we wouldn't necessarily be married to either or. I think that there's latitude here. I think a lot of that depends on the motivations of the applicant and then also how the committee makes a determination on the value of the existing palms.
Did I lose audio or is everybody silent?
I think we're just silent.
I'm going to go back to Mr. Slack's comments for a minute, just for understanding. Are you suggesting that we eliminate the palm trees at this time in favor of the jacarandas? Or are you supporting the Street Tree Advisory Commission?
Commissioners, I think that when we look at the king palms from staff's perspective, those are not trees that we would remove. So we would, if somebody called for inspection, we went out and looked at them. They're in generally good health, fairly well maintained. There's no hazardous issues associated with them. So it's not really something that we would take action on. And in situations that exist, if somebody's still motivated to remove the trees, then we push them through the application review process and tend to adhere to the Street Tree Advisory Committee and the commission's ultimate decision on the application. So I don't think that we try to honor the ultimate action of the commission. So I think if the commission feels that there's value in retaining the palms, then the commission should vote to deny the palm, the request to remove the king palms. If there's general consensus and motivation that a street tree makes more practical sense, a canopy tree, than the king palms, then you certainly could make a vote and approve the removal of the king palms with the condition of the replant of the jacaranda. And alternatively, if you upheld the Street Tree Advisory Committee's recommendation, that would not prevent the applicant from planting trees within the front yard of their property while still retaining the king palms.
So if we were to follow Commissioner Longstreet's suggestion of cohabitation of the two trees with a 3 to 5 year growth allocation, it's not complicated to drop a palm tree around a jacaranda without causing damage. So that actually is a functional solution as well.
Commissioner Perry, I would agree with that.
I would add that I'm uncomfortable removing those trees without a set plan for any replacement. And before us today, we don't have any set plan. We have ideas. But, you know, I'm looking at a picture of it where a huge tree was removed, which is another viable space that seemed to coexist with those palms before. So, you know, I would be okay to deny without prejudice if they wanted to come back with a plan that gave us some assurance that those trees would be replaced. And we could be looking, you know, Street Tree Advisory Committee could look at it and we could look at it and, you know, so that's kind of where I stand right now.
Nicole, are you still on the line or have you stepped away?
Then
I'm
she
still
stepped away.
Still
Oh, shit.
listening, but I'm dealing with the issue that I had. So I'm still listening and I'm prepared to vote when the time comes. But
Okay, do you want me to step in and just for a second?
Sure.
Okay, I just wasn't quite sure. Well, I'm prepared to make a motion, or Bibi, would you like to? Or would anybody else like to? I don't want to single anyone out. Would anyone else like to?
I just want to say, I agree with Commissioner Longstreet in the sense of it'd be nice to have them come back with a plan of replacement of what the landscape would look like if the trees were to be removed. Because I think in my mind, it seems good to also keep in mind the property owner's happiness or overall happiness with the way their house looks or their yard. So if they have a plan of replacement, that would be something nice to see more concrete details on.
I would make a motion to deny without prejudice for the, to give the applicant a chance to provide a new landscape plan. And that the commission is interested in a plan also in seeing if there could be a plan where the palm trees could coexist for a period of time till the other trees were established.
I'm happy to second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
I
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved. Nicole, are you back?
No, not yet.
Okay, next one then.
Chair Clark and Commissioners, the next Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review is a request to remove a Canary Island pine, which is a street tree located at 1723 Grand Avenue. The applicant listed a couple reasons on the application for removal. Those included hardscape disruption, and fire concerns, and just a general lack of maintenance as well. The committee reviewed the reasons listed on the application, talked about the general condition of the tree, noting that it was in really good health. There was conversation involving staff about the maintenance that the tree has received. It has not been pruned in several years, and the committee did ask that if the tree ended up being denied for removal, that if we had the capacity to schedule it for maintenance at some point in the near future. And we did agree that if in the event that the tree was denied, that we would make special arrangements to schedule it for pruning as part of our service request pruning program. Again, noting it would be sometime in the near future. We try to trim conifers in the fall. The hardscape disruption was looked at. It was relatively minimal, and there was general consensus that the disruption present could be fixed without causing detrimental damage to the tree that would require removal. There were fire concerns listed. The committee was pretty firm on that the tree was not a true fire hazard. There is an accumulation of old needles in the canopy that would be addressed as part of the just general maintenance of the tree. But again, they did note that the tree in its current condition is not true fire hazard. After review, the committee made a recommendation to deny the request for the removal of the Canary Island pine at 1723 Grand Avenue.
Are there any questions? If no one else has a question, I do have one. I was a bit curious from the committee's expertise perspective on what basis they can say something, what basis they determine something is or isn't a true fire hazard, and what would an example of a true fire hazard be?
Vice Chair McGill and commissioners, I think when we look at living healthy trees, it's very, very difficult to determine that they're a true fire hazard. In previous examples that we've looked at, where we've looked at living trees even within high fire hazard zones throughout the Riviera and foothill areas, it's very rare, if ever, that even the fire department will classify a living healthy tree as an actual fire hazard. There's a difference between something being a fire hazard and maybe a fuel source. This is a relatively standalone tree. There's not really the fuel ladder type of situation that you would have like in an open grown environment, where you may have a lot of dead material underneath the canopy that could actually travel up the tree and ignite the tree. So when they're saying, I think anytime that we look at a relatively healthy, green tree in town, it's never going to really meet that criteria of an actual fire hazard.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additional questions? Okay, Ms. Navarez, do we have anybody who wishes to speak from the public?
I do not see any raised hands. If anybody would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. No raised hands.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, well,
I would make a motion that we concur with the Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation to deny the removal of the Canary Island pine at 1726 Grand Avenue.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Baker. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. And great.
Chair Clark and commissioners, the next item for review is the request to remove an evergreen ash located within the front setback of the property at 3943 Camellia Lane. The applicant listed a few different reasons requesting for removal. The biggest reason was hardscape disruption, both of the sidewalk, the driveway, and they have sort of a knee wall that separates the properties there that the tree has begun to displace. They've also listed maintenance concerns with evidence of previous branch failures. The committee evaluated each of the concerns, noted the tree was in really good health, but they also did comment that this particular species of tree is quite problematic. There was reference to its weedy nature, and by that I just mean it seed travels by wind, and it's a tree that you can kind of walk around town, drive around town, and see like little seedlings sprouting up everywhere. So it is somewhat problematic from an invasive perspective. There was also a fair amount of discussion about the tree's long-term mature potential size. This is a tree that can grow to really large size, both in height, but also in girth. The trunks can get quite large, upwards of 3 to 4 feet in diameter pretty easily. And this tree likely was germinated on its own in this spot and allowed to grow, was maintained for a while. But the committee did provide comments that they felt that this tree in its existing location was going to be very problematic in the long term as the tree continued to mature, as the root system continued to develop and the trunk increased in diameter or girth. And based upon the discussion, the committee made the recommendation to approve the removal of the Evergreen Ash within the front setback at 3943 Camellia Lane, and determined the commission could make the finding that principles of good forest management will be best served by the proposed removal.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Slack? Okay, Ms. Navarez, do we have any member of the public wishing to speak?
Vice Chair McGill, there are no raised hands.
Okay. Discussion or motion?
I will make a motion.
I will if no one else will. Do you want to go ahead?
I would move that we concur with the Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for the removal of the tree of the evergreen ash at 3943 Camellia Lane in Santa Barbara, and that the findings would be this is in the principles, supports the principles of good forest management.
I'll second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'll abstain.
Okay, so we have 6 ayes and 1 abstention. So moved. Are you back, Chair Clark?
I am, thank you.
Okay, back to you.
Chair Clark and Commissioners, the next item for review is the request to remove a blue gum eucalyptus located within the front setback, technically the backyard though, of the property at 921 Isleta Avenue. The request came shortly after the fire that broke out on the other side of the hill. The applicant did list fire as the primary concern, and just a general note that the tree did not provide a lot of landscape value in its current state. The committee discussed, again, the fire-related issue and wanted to make sure that in discussion with the commission that the ultimate recommendation that is to remove the tree has nothing to do with the applicant's concern from a fire perspective. And that ties directly back to the conversation we had regarding the pine tree at Grand Avenue. The blue gum has developed on a pretty steep hill slope, and during inspection, the committee members, the arborists on the committee, noted that there was quite a bit of undermining that had occurred to the tree. The tree had a pretty significant lean. There's a visual within the slide here of high utility lines on the other side of the street that's in the basically in the path of failure if this tree did fall, and felt that there was a general safety concern that would support the removal of the blue gum. Again, noting that the support for the removal had nothing to do with the concerns from a fire perspective. The applicant was present and provided some comments, and there was good discussion with the applicant in regards to what to do with the stump on the slope if the tree was ultimately approved for removal. And there was general consensus both with the committee members and also the applicant that the retention of the stump makes good practical sense just from a slope stabilization perspective. After review, the committee made a recommendation to support the removal of the blue gum at 921 Isleta Avenue and made the determination that the commission could make the finding that the principles of good forest management were best served by the proposed removal.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Okay, Ms. Navarez, do we have anyone here to speak on this agenda item?
Chair Clark, there are no raised hands.
I could make a motion to recommend that the commission approves removal of the blue gum eucalyptus at 921 Isleta, recommending that the stump remain in place based on the findings that the principles of good forest management will be best served by the proposed removal.
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Chair Clark and Commissioners, the next item for review is the request to remove a coast redwood located within the front setback of the property at 2711 Vernon Road. To some of you, this may seem somewhat familiar. We reviewed this request back in May 13th of 2020 during the special Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. During that time, the applicant was requesting the tree due to just general decline throughout the canopy and some safety concerns. The applicant has now come back for review to request the removal of the coast redwood due in conjunction to the original concerns raised, as well as significant comprehensive landscape improvements to the property, which involve lots of low water use landscaping, some new hardscape improvements, and a really integral component of that design is eliminating that high wall that exists right at the front lot line and creating sort of a terraced effect that they feel would obviously not work with the existing redwood and require its removal. They did propose the planting of a new tree or trees to offset the loss of the existing redwood. And I think there was just general concern noted by the applicant's landscape architect that both they felt together, the applicant and the landscape architect, that the tree has been in a state of decline, will continue to decline, and it just made practical sense to remove the tree now, plant something else, and allow it to establish and take shape and offset some of the loss in biomass. There was quite a bit of discussion amongst the committee members and good back and forth conversation between the landscape architect and the committee members in terms of options and just general discussion about tree health. There was general consensus of the committee members that the tree was in good to fair health and that it had a pretty lengthy useful service life left, especially if there were additional things like water and mulching that could go towards just helping the general cultural needs of the tree. Again, the applicant felt differently than that. There was the good back and forth discussion. We spent a lot of time on this item. The committee members were very complimentary of the proposed landscape improvements and did note that it was a very, very difficult decision. They ultimately determined, the majority of the members, that the tree was in good enough health, provided enough community benefit that it at this time did not satisfy any findings for removal, and voted to deny the request for the removal of the coast redwood at 2711 Vernon Road.
Thank you. Questions?
I've got a couple of questions. The first one, I guess, goes to the landscape plan. How do I ask this? What can be done about the terracing and the wall if the redwood remains? I mean, basically, what happens to the landscaping plan and some of the key elements of the plan if the redwood remains?
Chair Clark and Commissioner McGill, I know that Robert Richards, landscape architect, is likely in attendance, and he likely can provide more detailed of a response than I can. But I think just from a general safety concern, they would have to make significant modifications to that portion of the proposed improvements, at least near the tree, to avoid what I think that everybody would. There was general consensus that it would require too much root pruning in order to put the terracing in and still retain the redwood. The first terraced wall, I think, occurs within a couple feet of the actual base of the tree, and then you're actually removing soil as you move down. So I think the landscape plan would have to be reimagined if they were to retain the redwood. And again, I think the landscape architect could probably elaborate on that in a little bit more detail in terms of the proposed design.
Okay, and thank you. My second question really comes down to the health of the tree versus water usage. I mean, it was described as in fair health and could benefit from additional water. When you say additional water, what order of magnitude are you talking about to bring it into good health? Are we talking about tier 2 levels of watering, tier 3 levels of watering? Some sense of the magnitude of it.
Chair Clark and Commissioner McGill, I think you would have to sort of embark like on an exploratory type of watering regime before you could determine, how much water you're actually talking. I think if you were to retain the tree and you were trying to improve its health, you would utilize probably soaker hose or something that's going to provide like a really slow level of saturation. We don't really know I don't know what the soil type is, so that can dramatically impact just water infiltration in general. You would want to try to soak the soil profile probably to a depth of 2 feet. So you're talking a pretty considerable amount of water, I would imagine. And that is something that is going to have to be essentially probably done in some level of perpetuity. It may only be monthly. It may not even need to be that frequent, but you really would kind of have to try frequency, see what kind of response that you had, and kind of continue to adjust the schedule based on sort of just the results that you were seeing in the tree. And the tricky part is that it takes a long time to make long-term health corrections on a large old tree like this. So it would be probably a considerable amount of water use to quantify that. I don't know that I have the ability to do that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I mean, where I'm kind of coming from with it is if it's going to be kept as opposed to new landscape and you want it to be in the best possible health, and yet certainly if somebody's being bumped up the tiers in water usage, that becomes not the water itself notwithstanding, that becomes quite a financial ask to put somebody into say tier 3 if they've been in 1 or 2.
Mr. Longstreet?
I'm looking at this plan and I see that they're proposing an olive to go in, which would have a decent canopy, but in quite a few years. There seems to not be a street tree in that area. Would we be able to recover a little bit more of the canopy that we're losing by requesting not only the tree listed on the landscape plan, but also a street tree in that area?
Chair Clark and Commissioner Longstreet, from previous site visits and just a quick Google search here while I'm at my computer, it does appear that the parkways would be able to support a street tree. I think it looks like it's pretty long. So, even if there's infrastructure there, certainly there's a high likelihood that a street tree could be planted.
Thank you.
Is there any more questions? I'll invite members of the public to the item.
Chair Clark, we have a number of raised hands. First is Sylvia Acevedo. Ms. Acevedo, you will need to unmute yourself and you will have 2 minutes to speak. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for this time. My name is Sylvia Acevedo. I am one of the owners of that home. Let me address some of the things. We did request last year. We were asked to increase the amount of water. We have done that. It is on a soaker. It does cost us quite a bit of money, as somebody addressed. So we've mulched it. We have paid for a professional arborist. We have really invested in that tree and it continues to decline. I can't imagine how much more it will cost us, which will be significant, and it will move us into another tier. The number one thing our neighbors say to us is they are concerned of the safety of that tree. It has dropped limbs. When it is significantly windy, limbs fall down, even though we have trimmed it regularly. And the limbs are not small, they're rather heavy. There's concern of it toppling. And, we then made a major investment in going completely as much hardscape as possible. We know that the walls are not to code, they're grandfathered in, where you've got this new plan so that it fits in with the city plans. And also, it's not a tree that has thrived in that area. There was a tree, a redwood across the street. It died in 2008. There was another redwood down the street. We all saw it in decline. And finally, it was taken out. And that was at Selena de la Vina and Vernon Road. We have complied with everything they've requested. That poor tree is just going to decline. We'd much rather plant a tree that fits in with the neighborhood canopy, that also fits in with the drought requirements, and also alleviates the significant safety concerns for myself and also my neighbors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Acevedo.
Mr. Robert Richards, you will unmute yourself, please.
Welcome, Mr. Richards.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hi there, board. Can you hear me? This is Robert Richards. I'm the landscape architect for the project. I want to thank you guys for reviewing this. I think Sylvia summed it up pretty nicely there. Just to bring up some of the questions there about if this could be done with the walls, in their current location by keeping the tree there. There's no way that we could really build this front yard landscape that's being proposed by retaining that tree. The tree has extensive root structure throughout the whole area where the walls and the front entry are going to go. And another issue is that, discussion about adding more water onto this landscape is that we're trying to go towards a drought tolerant landscape. This is in the city's interest. We're entering a drought period right now, and the cost of water is a serious issue for everybody. It's also like a public safety issue. So we're trying to go in the other direction by having a tree that really fits in with what's going on there. I think that my client Sylvia would be open to suggestions of a street tree as part of the mitigation of removing this redwood tree. And this is something that we're seeing throughout the city where these redwoods are starting to be taken out due to drought and climate change. I noted in the letter that I sent you guys out of Stowe Grove, they had to remove 40 redwoods. There was also up at Westmont, they've just removed one. So I hope you guys also had a chance to go through the letter where I outlined all the findings, where I think there are several reasons here that meet the municipal code for why this tree should be removed, from its drought tolerance to the conflict with our proposed construction for the front yard to the safety issues. If my client has to stop watering this tree, it could become a fire hazard. It's even more of a safety hazard than it is now. So I appreciate your review, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Navarez, are there other speakers to this tree?
Chair Clark, yes, we have one more speaker, Erica Leachman. Ms. Leachman, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Great, good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Erica Leachman, and I wanted to join tonight to show our support for the landscape improvements proposed at 2711 Vernon Road. Our family lives right across the street with a clear view of the property's frontage and its interface with the public right-of-way. And compared to the existing setting, we've reviewed the plans to have a pretty clear idea of what's being proposed here. The existing setting includes a retaining wall, a lawn, and non-native plantings. So the proposed plan is a huge improvement in our opinion, and would also contribute to the neighborhood's visual quality and continuity. And we especially appreciate the proposed planting palette, which would expand the range of native plants on site, and the terracing would substantially enhance the visual quality and the human scale of our neighborhood. So, living across the street and seeing what's there right now and visualizing the changes that are proposed is really quite exciting. And then we also want to support the proposal to replace the redwood tree with another mature tree species that is more appropriate for our neighborhood and the city as well. The redwood tree, as noted by Robert and Sylvia tonight, it's mature and it's visually remarkable in our neighborhood, but it's anomalous in its setting. We're near Oak Park. We're on Mission Creek, so the setting amongst oaks and sycamores that's where we're living. We're living in a different habitat. And as the applicant has suggested, a carefully selected replacement tree would be more valuable to the neighborhood as not just as landscaping, but also as roosting and nesting habitat, and also provides for a more diverse understory. As you probably know with redwoods, the understory is pretty uniform, and it's hard to grow other species that would contribute to the overall landscape plan. As Sylvia noted, we've sat back and watched the health of this redwood tree decline in the 12 years that we've lived here. Its poor health diminishes its value for shade and for habitat, and it continuously generates debris that clutters up yards and the gutters that the street sweepers in the city have to deal with. And we've also seen large branches come down in high winds and storms, landing in our yard. So we know it firsthand. We understand that the decline may be related to the most recent.
Thank you
I'm
for
sorry,
your
Miss Leachman, I had to mute you. Your 2 minutes were up.
Ms. Navarro, was that the last speaker?
Chair Clark, yes, there are no more raised hands.
Okay, I'd like to open this back up for discussion. Sure, we have lots of thoughts about this.
I'll raise my hand.
Vice Chair McGill.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a tough one because it's a big dramatic tree. And obviously the applicants have, it feels like they've worked pretty hard to try to make this work. And what they're proposing seems like a viable landscape plan and a well thought out landscape plan. It's hard to think about not having a big tree, but it's not one that's necessarily suitable for our new climate, and I'm inclined to pursue the idea that Longstreet floated, which is a setback tree condition plus a street tree at a suitable location as a possible way forward here.
I hear you, and it is a tough one. I would just like to recall a few things. If we remove every tree that is no longer suitable for this climate, we would have a pretty barren landscape here in Santa Barbara. One thing we're known for is the diversity of our urban forest, and we have put that forest here. If we're going to roll back all those changes, our landscape would look a lot different. Two, new landscaping will also be water intensive. Three, I think the loss of that tree would be a huge loss to the neighborhood. I go by that tree quite often, and it makes me smile every single time. I know I don't live across the street from it, so I don't see it declining on a daily basis. I did notice the Street Tree Advisory Committee thought it was in reasonable health. And the landscape plan is a conceptual plan, so there's room to move things around a little bit. At the same time, I do sympathize with the owner and wanting to not move into another tier of water and wanting to change our landscape. I just don't know. I believe that this tree is a tree for the community. It's not just a tree for the people that live there. So we're not taking the tree. If we take it away, it's going to be taken away from a lot more people than just the resident. I'm almost at an impasse where I am with that tree. Those are my comments. Commissioner Longstreet.
I hear what you're saying. I feel that this tree's is in decline, and I think we have it may be the time for a change. It is a substantial loss to the community. I understand that. And I could only support this with the addition of a second tree. I mean, that does not even come close to replacing it, but as we look to the future, it gives us a little bit more biomass. And I would at this time make a motion that we support removal of the coast redwood at 2711 Vernon Road with the condition that it be replaced by, will you help me with the size on the olive tree, Mr. Slack? What is a decent size olive tree that will give it a healthy start? But
Chair Clark and Commissioner Longstreet, I think that we've historically not conditioned sizes, but
okay,
24-inch box, 36-inch box, or that's pretty common. Those aren't extremely expensive, and we like to say, in terms of planting and establishment, smaller tends to be better. That's why a lot of times when the committee makes a recommendation to condition, they talk about the mature potential of the tree rather than the size. I don't know if it says it on the plans. Perhaps Mr. Richards could tell us what they are planning on putting back in, and that could provide some insight. They may be planning on planting something larger. I don't know. As you start to get larger and larger in size, it starts to increase pretty significantly in cost in terms of replacement, and you don't necessarily guarantee quick establishment when you're planting, large box trees.
Then I will bypass size and also that there be a street tree planted nearby to be worked out with the urban forest superintendent.
I will second that.
And the findings would be in support of good forest management.
We have a first and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Me. So moved.
Excuse me, Chair Clark and Commissioners. The next Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review is the request to remove a coast redwood located at 2019 Bath Street. The reasons the applicant listed for review were safety concerns, noting that the tree has 3 large stems originating all at the same point, oftentimes referred to as codominant stems, like within the arboricultural community. They also listed maintenance concerns and then also private sewer lateral concerns. The committee discussed the listed reasons for removal, noting the tree was in pretty good health overall. Not a lot of decline throughout the canopy. No real structural concerns. The upright orientation of the stems and the lack of canopy expansion laterally or horizontally kind of lends itself to a good structural integrity throughout the tree. Sewer lateral issues were talked about. No real evidence was provided in relation to issues or attempts at repair where the tree prevented it. So it was really kind of a subjective claim regarding the sewer lateral issues. Again, no real evidence there. The committee discussed again those primary concerns, noted the general health of the tree, and after review made a recommendation to deny the request for the removal of the coast redwood at 2019 Bath Street.
Thank you. Any questions? No, Ms. Navarez, is there anybody here to speak to the street?
Chair Clark, there are no raised hands.
I can make a motion to agree with the Street Trees Advisory Committee's recommendation to deny the removal of the Coast Redwood at 2019 Bath.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moved.
Chair Clark and Commissioners, the last Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review is a request to remove a cook pine located within the front setback of the property at 410 Los Alturas Road. The applicant they listed safety concerns, as well as maintenance concerns with the tree, and just a desire to move away from the landscape. It was planted several years ago. They made reference to a small little oak sapling that's located closer to the street within the front yard, that they were hoping to take the cook pine out and allow the oak tree to establish and fill in the location of the existing cook pine. So there were no noted replacements proposed, again referencing the fact that there's a small little oak tree on the property, almost assuredly germinated from a seed, from an acorn a few years back. The committee discussed the applicant's reasons listed for removal, noted the tree was in excellent health. The cook pine in general tends to be a species that isn't problematic from a safety perspective. These particular trees all have some form of lean. There's a kind of a natural phenomenon with this species where they all lean towards the equator. As you move further and further away from the equator, the tree's lean gets more and more pronounced. So that's something that you can observe all throughout town with the cook pine. It's not a safety concern. It's just a natural growth response, pretty unique to this particular species of tree. Again, the committee noted really no significant safety concerns, no site disturbance around the tree. Tree was in really good health. Felt that it contributed pretty significantly, not just to the property, but to the local neighborhood aesthetic and just gained community benefit. And after review, made a recommendation to deny the request for the removal of the cook pine at 410 Los Alturas.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just one quick one. The oak sapling, how long will it take to reach any substantial size? And at what point does the cook pine start to become an issue for that sapling?
Chair Clark and Commissioner McGill, probably a really long time. Again, it's tough to say because you never really know what performance is going to be from year to year. But it is a very, very small little sapling. And, we're talking, those two could probably coexist for 10, 15 years before it was really kind of an issue. Be a lot of tree in the front yard because they have the cook pine, there's a she oak in the property. And then if they're going to support this development of the oak tree, be a lot of trees in the yard, but if we've ever taken a walk in the woods, trees can grow pretty close together and they can be pretty happy. So I think they could coexist for quite some time.
Any more questions? Anyone like to make a motion?
Public?
Oh, thank you. Ms. Navarez, is there anybody here to speak on this agenda item?
Chair Clark, no, there are no raised hands.
All right.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion that we agree with the street committee recommendation to deny the removal of the cook pine at 410 Los Alturas Road.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Right, so moved. Thank you, Mr. Slack. And that brings us through the Street Tree Advisory Committee items to our director's report.
Chair Clark and Commissioners, few things that we'd like to share with you at the meeting today. First of all, if you've had the opportunity to spend some time in our city parks, you'll notice our new park signage is beginning to go in. This has been a project that's been in process for more years than I care to remember. It started with 2 interns that walked and geo-referenced every single existing park sign in all of our parks about 5 years ago, which created the demonstration of the need to transition from the old hodgepodge into the new. And then we spent quite a bit of time going through all of the design review approval processes to have our sign program designed and approved. The commission on a number of occasions received presentations and then designed the signs and then ordered them, and COVID hit. So the signs delivery was extremely delayed. However, they are starting to arrive. And so we are prioritizing areas and verifying we have enough signs that we need, and ultimately hope that within the next perhaps 3 months, we finish the sign program and you'll see them all installed. So it's been quite a process, but hopefully we'll finally get there in the end. Some of the new signs that we have, really the intent is to try to convey a message with symbols rather than lots of words, and then to use the strikeout in a circle, which indicates it's not permitted, rather than using the word no, 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 which has been a practice in the past. And then also just to provide clarity and consistency across our parks. Because we have so many different locations, as you can imagine, there's a lot of signs to install. So it'll be rolling out as we're able to make it happen. You may notice a few locations where you might wonder why a sign was installed in that manner. We do have some fix-it items out there. So hopefully people will have patience. And certainly if you see something that you think looks amiss, don't hesitate to take a photograph and send us an email. We're always like to have feedback, and you know, things happen. I think I've pulled 10 stickers off signs in Shoreline Park already because some delightful person decided that putting stickers on the sign was a good idea. If you see a sticker on the sign, it's not supposed to be there. And then Chair Clark mentioned National Trails Day. It was hosted on Saturday, June 12th. And, you know, we're really, you know, now that we're exiting the pandemic, we have had a few trail days. We have more and more opportunity to engage people in person in safe outdoor environments. And we spent the time on Hasesita Trail and Tunnel Trail with 18 individuals and a great compilation of city, county, both parks and engine company and Forest Service folks, along with the volunteers that really make up the backbone of what we're able to do on our fun country trails. And for those of you that are avid trail users, trails, just like so many of our parks and beaches, have been the go-to place for so many people during the pandemic. And so having folks come out to help maintain them is tremendous. Another area of our focus where we have few resources, but over the years, it's been quite amazing, the group of folks and the interest that's grown across the community to maintain trails. And let's
special shout out to Spencer Frazier is at every trail day, and he and Patrick Wiley worked for like 6 hours solid, and it was really hot that day. Along with Steve Biddle, the three of them they got a lot done. So I'm just wanted to pass that on.
Chair Clark, thank you. Thank you for recognizing them. I think this is probably one of the most enjoyable things they get to do, and they do come out on an additional work day to do this. And we're very pleased that we have staff that have embraced trail maintenance. It's not just about sidewalks, it's also about dirt, and it's also about open space and more. wild areas. Also, you have a page-long description of our facility reopening now that June 15th is past and we are gearing into the summer. Summer camps did start. Facilities have essentially been closed since March of 20. It's hard to even believe it's been that long, 2020. But we have put in place a set of plans to reopen our facilities. One of our challenges right now is due to sort of the significant staff reductions when our facilities closed. And everybody's talking about how difficult it is to hire new staff. Those issues, and then also we had to make some pretty significant operating budget reductions for this next year due to reduced revenues. We are strategically reopening facilities where it's most important. And then we anticipate as the year goes along and we have a better sense of the city's financial stability, we will be able to expand what we're doing. We're at skeleton staff in a lot of locations right now. That said, finally, yes, Chair Commissioner Longstreet.
I wanted to ask about the Cabrillo Pavilion. Is the restaurant moving forward in the opening of some of those exciting things?
Sure. Chair Clark, commissioners. Yes, we have a new restaurant coming to the Cabrillo Pavilion. Its name is Reunion Kitchen and Bar. It's a revisioning of the La Serena at East Beach. Same investment group, and they are currently under construction, restarted, and are moving forward rapidly. The goal date for opening is September 1st because there is quite a bit of work still left to be done. And then also, as we've discovered, and perhaps you may have if you have any home improvement projects, supplies and the supply chain is not what it used to be. And so there's long lead times for ordering things. And so part of it is that. But we're working very closely with the operators and the contractors and feel confident that they're moving forward. And you'll start seeing more information about the restaurant. They are going to start doing job fairs and hiring and be ready to open at the beginning of September. The beach level of the building will open to the public on June 28th. So we're close next Monday. That and it'll be open Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. for fee-based activities, including fitness. We've been chomping at the bit to implement the showers and the locker rooms, and then the multi-purpose room and the conference room will be available for rentals. One of the things I was going to suggest is the commission would like together to have a tour and a site visit to the Cabrillo Pavilion. We have some new commissioners, but then also some of you haven't seen the interior. We'd be happy to do that with you. The upstairs is also available to rent. You know, as the restrictions lift, more and more people are realizing they can gather and have events. There's still obviously precautions that people have to have in place. So we'll probably see more of that activity as we get into the summer and the early fall. And again, similar for the Cabrillo Pavilion, until we are able to staff up, we're really focusing the staff hours where it's most feasible to make use of existing staff. And then we'll extend into the weekend. Franklin Neighborhood Center will be open again to the lobby half-time. That's an area where we had to make a budget reduction. West Side Center reception area is closed, but business can be conducted by appointment, and the staff there are constantly working with people that are looking for picnic rentals, facility rentals. We obviously have a lot of nonprofit organizations that are housed there. So there's activity in and around the building. We just haven't reintroduced programs and services into that building yet, but it will be coming. Similar to Franklin, a lot of the nonprofit partners that we work with are looking to restart their programs come September. So again, it'll be a slow ramp up. The Louise Lowry Davis Center is under construction for renovation. So if you've gone by there lately, you'll see that the outdoor patio area is being constructed, the new entry. We have a long lead time for the windows and doors. So some of that's being delayed too, but we're pleased with that progress. And then the Laguna Street, one of the issues that we have here is we're extremely short-staffed here. And we have no front counter staff. We've reallocated front counter staff to career recreation and the community centers in Cabrillo Pavilion. So we are going to be only open by appointment until things change. That said, anybody that's meeting with any staff that work in this building will be able to come into the building and make an appointment or meet with us. And most people contact us directly anyway. We just don't have two full-time staff to be able to sit there or even one. And same thing with East Ortega. We're currently down an admin staff person there. We are meeting with people as they come in for tree-related questions. But again, not being able to ensure we can adequately staff responding to the public, plus also providing service to the park operations folks, has made it that we'll delay reopening that. We're currently recruiting for that second admin position. It's one that we prioritized for filling. So hopefully in the next couple of months, we can change the status of this office as well. So are there any other questions about reopening? It feels wonderful and it feels sort of strange, I would say. But also we've had so many people in our parks doing organized fitness and it feels like we're just doing all of that now. It's sort of waiting to see if people are going to start coming in. And it may be, you know, being the summer season, more people will be likely to spend time outside unless they have a very specific reason to be inside.
Wait, what will the mask requirements be inside our buildings that are reopening?
Chair Clark, thank you for that. We are currently finalizing those guidelines. We're from HR and like everywhere else, determining if someone's coming into the building, the expectation is that if they're unvaccinated, they will be wearing a mask. Inside the building, we also are keeping all of the other precautions in place that we have in terms of hand sanitizer, having the screens in front of the workspaces, and ensuring staff safety. It's a tricky situation, as many businesses are finding. You know, that's the approach that we're taking.
Okay, thank you.
I would also add that it's a citywide initiative. So as things change, we follow what the city policy is.
Is there any word on when we will be able to meet in person? Is that coming soon?
Commissioner Longstreet, thank you for asking that question. The City Council will begin meeting in council chambers on July 20th. They are doing a hybrid of both remote testimony and presentation and in person. And so it's kind of a soft reopening of council chamber, working through the bugs on that. The direction we have so far is that we would wait for council to test the waters, and that if the commission is interested in going to an in-person meeting, we could look at that for the August meeting. We would likely need to also accommodate remote participation as we transition into returning to normal operations. But we're very much open to what the commission might be interested in doing and happy to accommodate what you'd prefer. The emergency order is up in September, so then you know, then we probably will be all returning to in-person meetings, because it won't have, as a result of the Brown Act, that's what we'll be required to do.
Thank you.
I would also add for the commission, and we can send out separate communications to you, figuring out a time, even though it's the busy summer season, to do some park site visits outside and just spend some time reacquainting ourselves in person in that format. And then lastly, just a quick update. Staff was at City Council on June 8th, giving the City Council a status report on the Ortega Park murals. Thank you to Chair Clark and Vice Chair McGill for attending that meeting. As part of that meeting, and it's also online, recommendations for council, the council confirmed the city's priority to renovate Ortega Park. They directed staff to form a murals working group to finalize the recommendations for the murals as they are in the park, the future of those murals, but then also the vision for the murals program and how to continue that cultural heritage in the new park. And then they also supported, which was a proposal that staff brought forward, designating Ortega Park as a cultural heritage park. And this, as the commission is aware, we have designations for all of our parks. They're open spaces or neighborhood parks or community parks. And they're very much focused on what you do in those parks. And then sort of the idea of whether they are really solely focused in a neighborhood and therefore have a certain level of activity, or are more of a sports facility, such as Dwight Murphy, that we should be looking carefully at certainly certain parks such as Ortega and coming up with a proposal to establish a designation. That is a discussion that doesn't have to happen, or doesn't have to be finalized for the park approval process, but we will be bringing that forward for the commission to discuss as well as part of taking it to council as a future initiatives. We have put together the working group, and given the shortness and the opportunity to reach out to the chair and Vice Chair McGill stepped up to the plate to serve on that working group, and hopefully we will have a set of recommendations in fairly short order. We did also learn that we are still in the running for the state parks grant, so time is of the essence. I think what we heard at council, what I know we heard at council is that there's a number of areas of agreement. We need to work through the additional discussion items. We have input from the artists across the board on their desires. And if we can, once we come to consensus, we have those recommendations and hopefully can move forward with finalizing the park proposal. That concludes my comments. Be happy to answer any questions that the commission might have.
I was wondering, when will the working group start meeting, or has it already?
Working group meets for the first time tomorrow. It's a small focused group, you know, we're hopeful that that we can accomplish a lot in a fairly short timeline. Given there's been months and months of discussion, there's lots of input out there. That was one of the discussion that came up at council is that, you know, we're circling around what's really important and critical to the community and for the heritage of this park, and then also circling around the fact that no matter, you know, the park is in dire need of renovation and reinvestment given its age and declining infrastructure.
Thank you. And how, like, if we wanted to read about what happens at those meetings or read the minutes, is this meeting subject to the Brown Act? Do we have privileges to be able to read about it or participate, or?
Chair Clark, it is not a meeting that's subject to the Brown Act. It's a working group that's advising city staff moving forward. We will have a recap and a report out because it'll get fed into the project description, and we'll move through the project review and approval process.
Thank you, Vice Chair McGill, for stepping up to do that. Commissioner Feck?
Just a comment. The signs look great. I saw them at Ellis Keck Park, which is around the neighborhood I live in. And then just wanted to say I'm really interested in taking part of the Cabrillo Pavilion tour whenever that takes place. So thank you.
And thank you, Commissioner Feck, and all the commissioners. You know, if you find that you have a half hour, I'm also more than willing to give you a dime store version of the tour, or you can do it as a group. Either way, I wish my office was down there, but it's not. So an excuse to go down there.
Yeah, it's spectacular. The Park Foundation toured it a while back, and it's
Would very much appreciate that tour, Ms. Zachary.
Wonderful. Any more questions, Ms. Zachary, before we adjourn? No? All right. Well, you guys, happy June. We'll see you in July.
Okay.
And
you.
hopefully we'll be in person as soon as possible. August sounds great.
Safety first.
Just in the interest of summer planning, I will be out of town August 20th through 30th. So I will probably miss that meeting, just so you know.
Okay. All right.